Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with episode 5 of Castlevania Nocturne. It's been a little bit since we did episode 4, and that was actually intentional, surprisingly. Usually I don't plan for these breaks, but because we got halfway through the season last time, I decided to take a little time off and focus on other things, and then we would come back to this afterwards. And so now we're finally back. And it's a good thing too because it's last week of the year and almost the last day of recording for the year. So I have to at least get to one episode here before 2023 ends. So yeah, last we left off, we had a big mid-season fight in the prison, I guess you could say, under the Abbey, and it was pretty good, but it was very clearly like premature. Um, it didn't go too far, and there wasn't a lot. What it did confirm for the characters last time and everything, and even for us to a degree, is that Edouard is still in there to some degree. He doesn't seem to have any memories of himself, but he is definitely still in there. We also got Olrox being very, very sexy. It's like one of the few times I would simp over Olrox more than Dralta. Um, but considering we saw his whole naked ass last time, um, pretty good reason. The only thing we didn't get to see was the dick, which I am disappointed by. It's like I I don't think this show has ever actually shown like a dick before or like really any like notable view at the vagina or anything. I think it mostly has just shown like breasts and just generally naked people without showing the details and everything. But still, it's like it shows full blown sex at multiple points. It's like it's not really that big of a deal to show more. I know it's a censorship thing. I know it's all about how the censoring works and all, and how they can get the rating that they have. I understand that. You don't need to explain that to me. But I want to see his dick. And it's not even just a horny reason. It's partially a horny reason, but it's also just because of kind of equality, I guess you could say, in terms of fan service. And this would be considered fan service, even if it's not being done quite in the same way. It's still fan service. But you always see all of this fan service, all of this nudity with a lot of women, and you get to see like the full ass breasts and everything, with like nothing leaving to the imagination there. Like again, a lot of times you don't like see like the full ass vag, but still, it's just you get to see. I feel a lot more with women, and and things are often a lot more okay with sexualizing women, and that's always felt wrong to me. Um, or I should specify femme presenting individuals. Um, but it's like whenever you have a man or mask presenting individual, it's like it's different. And mind you, what they've shown in this, just in that last episode, was a lot more than most shows would do. And mind you, and I want to make clear, I've seen movies and shows with, naked men in them before. Like there are movies out there where you get to see everything. Um and even in the first season of this, it's like yeah, or the first series of this, I should say, not season. The first series, the regular Castlevania series that preceded Nocturne. You did still get to see plenty of naked dude in that. Like, this isn't just brand new for Nocturne specifically. And this series does really well at that, but a lot of shows wouldn't. And that's still something that there are a lot of shows, kind of catching up with, having that equality in fan service. Um, for example, Fire Force. Fire Force does a lot of female fan service, but has done very little male fan service. There's been like a tiny bit of it. Like the season 2 premiere has like touched on it, but for the most part, it's not as much a thing. And it's kind of disappointing, and a lot of anime is like that. And obviously, Castlevania is a Western cartoon, but it is anime adjacent. There are anime studios that worked on it and everything, and it's very much in the style of anime. But it is majority a Western cartoon in terms of its production. Um, but most anime and even adult cartoons do that kind of stuff and are, again, still catching up. And mind you, there's a lot of these that are still catching up to also non-binary people. There's still very little non-binary representation out there in the world, even though queer representation in general has gotten better. um, Trans representation, non-binary representation, those are still struggling, especially non-binary representation. And some shows will have great representation for that, like Steven Universe has non-binary representation. But unfortunately, that's not that's the outlier in these kinds of situations. So we need to rally for more representation like that. We really need to keep fighting for that. And we also need to rally for equality in, if they're going to have fan service, there needs to be equality in it. And again, this show is doing pretty great at that. But it's like, if you're going to go all the way to show booba, you can show dick as well. And again, I know it's a censorship thing. I understand that they probably literally can't just do that without hurting their rating. I get that. But that shouldn't be the case, is what I'm trying to say. They should be able to get away with that. Because it doesn't really change anything at this point. It doesn't make it any more explicit. It's already super fucking explicit. Having a visible dick or a visible vagina isn't really changing anything at this point. It's just a visual addition. But either way, we're gonna go into the second stage of this season. I don't know what exactly that's gonna involve. I'm not 100% sure on how things are going to go with the villains as well. I'm still kind of thinking that Olrox is going to be a recurring villain just because of his importance to Richter's story. He's definitely coming back past this season. And I don't think we're going to get much of the Messiah in this season either. She's being built up, and she's going to be sort of the big bad at the end of things, probably. Or at least one of the big bads. Maybe the big bad for next season. Meanwhile, we have Drolta. And unfortunately, I think Drolta is going to die by the end of the season. I think she's the season 1 villain. The one who's going to be kind of the lead into bridging into the Messiah being the main villain in season 2. And mind you, she's technically the main villain now, but she's not active as the main villain now. Drolta and Olrox are kind of the active villains, but Olrox less so than Drolta. So I think Drolta's probably going to be defeated by this season, and that's going to be kind of what they go for with having like the seasonal villain as well as setting up for the more major villains going forward. Now, Olrock seems like he's going to be working with the Messiah, but it doesn't seem like he fully wants to. It seems like he's just doing so because it's beneficial. So I'm curious as to how that's going to continue to go. And we know, I can't remember her name right now. It's been a little bit, so cut me some slack there. Edouard's friend, I can't remember her name. The one who's with our party currently. She is going to want to get Edouard back at any cost, and she's going to become even more reckless than she's already been. It's ironic that she's like told others that it's like the adults are talking and shit, and it's like she's been probably the most reckless character of our group, much more so than Richter or Maria. She is so reckless and has caused all these different problems. Like, it's partially her fault that Edouard is dead. Absolutely. And the fact that they got caught at that point in the first place. And so many other issues like that happened with, you know, the fight down there was because of her. She's not thinking things through properly. And it's ironic that Richter, the guy who's not, like, you know, big with plans, is the one who was basically having to tell her, we need a fucking plan here. We can't just rush into shit. And that's I think that was the same scene where she was, like, deriding him for being a kid while she's, like, an adult. And it's just like, lady, you want to rush in there with absolutely no plan, no idea what you're doing, no idea what the enemy forces are like, and just wreck shit. You are going to get yourself and everyone else killed by doing that. It's and basically that's almost what happens. They have to escape because they have no other choice. It's stupid. Don't get me wrong, I understand why she's doing this. I understand her emotional pain with Edouard and everything and just everything going on. I get that. But there's a point where she has to realize that she's the one being the problem. And that this is not going to work unless she calms the fuck down and listens. They're not saying they're not going to go in and try to save Edouard or anything. They just say they need a plan. Well, mostly Richter. Maria's kind of just being gung-ho about it too, but, you know. Not as much. The point is, it's like, I like her character. Annette. I think that's her name. Annette, by the way. I just thought of that. I like her character. But she is without question this stubborn dumbass. She is such a stubborn dumbass. And I hope that that's what they're working with her character arc. I hope that that's where they're going, that they're going to make her realize how fucking stupid she's being. And how she needs to grow the fuck up, honestly. It's like, there's certain things that you can rush into, but this is not one of them. Again, this kind of bullshit is what got Edouard killed in the first place. And he might be back as a night creature, but that's not going to remain the case if she keeps pulling this shit. So, we'll see how this continues to go. We start the second half, and hopefully hopefully we just kind of go from there and things don't get too intense until the end. Um, and I'm thinking we'll probably this episode will probably be a little bit of a reprieve from a lot of the super intense stuff. It's probably going to be like just the aftermath of everything that happened last time. Um, and then then for the final three episodes, we'll probably start getting more intense again. We'll have like one episode of just a little bit of a breather, a little bit of both sides kind of gathering what they've learned and gathering together their plans. That's what I'm viewing for it. But again, I could be wrong. It's always possible. We'll see how this goes. So, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades black, then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, yeah, this was kind of what I thought it was going to be, with being like kind of just the aftermath of everything, but also the setup for what is to come. And we got some notable moments and revelations in this. Let's talk about some of those notable moments and revelations. So first off, Annette is still being a dumbass. She's compromising and not like going to attack them, but she's spying on them still because she just can't let things go and actually come up with a plan before, taking action, because she is, a reckless dumbass. And her entire speech about, like, connecting it to her past as a slave and everything, it's like, again, as I said in the reaction, I get it. But what she's saying it's not really relevant here. It's not really relevant to the argument at hand. And her entire thing about, like, running away or not, and talking about, like, Richter and everything here, with him running away from, the guy who killed his mother, it's like, that's not really comparable. She's making excuses. Her past and what had happened to her is completely valid, and she has a right to think about that in regards to everything that has happened to her. But that doesn't connect to other people necessarily. That doesn't connect to Richter. That's not his story. That's not his experiences. She's trying to place her experiences on other people as if they define them as well, and that's just not how it works. That's just not a thing. And she goes out and spies on them, and does so fairly well despite, the heavy breathing, because she's losing her mind, because she's, not really okay. And again, I get why, but still. She ends up coming across, what's his face? The vampire who had enslaved her and everything. And is able to finally get her revenge. She's finally able to gain closure with that by trapping him in crosses, so that when the sun comes up, it burns him alive. You see her smile there, signifying the closure that she's finally got, and maybe this is going to help. Maybe having that closure from her former slave owner is going to help her, calm the fuck down and actually think before she acts. Because again, the things that she said about her own experiences are perfectly valid, but only to her. They're not valid to Richter and his situation at all. And they're not valid to this specific circumstance that is happening with the vampires right now. it's like she's trying to force a square peg into a circular hole. It both are valid, but they just don't fit together. Meanwhile, Emmanuel, the abbot, comes to visit the Renards, and it's kind of accidentally revealed while they're arguing about the morality of what he's doing and everything. It's revealed that he is Maria's father, which is the most just unsurprising twist ever. It's like, honestly, I'm surprised they hadn't said something about that before now. Like, literally, he and Maria look just alike. Like, they are so, it is so obvious. Their designs are practically mirroring each other. Obviously, the only main difference being she is a young girl and he is an older man. But they look so much alike, it's not funny. It was super fucking obvious. Like, come on. um, I was kind of thinking they weren't going to say anything, but it was just going to always remain implied. Um, but the fact that she didn't even know actually also really surprised me. Like, that surprised me more than the twist itself. It's like, wait, you didn't know this? Have you ever looked at yourself in a mirror, girl? Because you look just like him. But it's something that apparently her mother hid from her. Apparently, she told Maria that her father was dead. Which is interesting because I guess it's because it was a birth out of like wedlock and everything. Because at that point, she wasn't really ashamed by the abbot. In fact, she trusted him. So it had to be because of the out of wedlock thing. But I'm definitely interested to see how Maria continues to handle this. And of course, the final big revelation at the end. Richter, after having, cried his traumatized little heart out, after having just kind of wandered for a bit, ends up in this pub, tries to get some food, and it ends up getting paid for by this old man. He goes to thank and talk to him. The old man's like, just get the fuck out of here, basically. And that's when a vampire comes in. The old man steals Richter's whip, kills the vampire, and basically pieces out while saying, like, that whip is too heavy. It's heavier than it's heavy. It's as heavy as I remember. And he's like, "Who are you?" It's like, "You idiots! I'm your grandfather, obviously." It's another thing that was super obvious, but with this one not having any previous build up, with this one kind of coming in this episode, it's something that you put together as you watched. Again, it's just the fact that he grabs the whip and knows how to use it so efficiently. Like, it just basically confirms right then and there that this is a Belmont. And judging on his age, he basically has to be Richter's grandfather. It just makes sense. Now, his reason for being here is unknown at the moment. That could be any number of things. He's clearly someone who is not really into the kind of vampire hunter life anymore. He clearly has resentment for it, based on his entire line about the whip being so heavy. It's like, he wasn't talking about its weight. I think that's pretty obvious. He was talking about how heavy it is to carry that kind of burden on your shoulders. So it's like, yeah. I kind of could believe that he maybe retired like shortly before Julia's death, but I'm not 100% on like when that would be. We'll probably find out, mind you, because I don't think it was right after her death, unless he was still hunting vampires without the whip at that point, because Julia had the whip at that time. So unless he had already passed down the whip and like was hunting vampires in a different way, which is I guess possible, I just feel it's pretty unlikely. I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. I'm sure. Um, but we also see in this episode Drolta and Olrox having a little conversation about things. Yeah, and it's very clear that Olrox is not quite in on all of this, on serving Erzsébet. He's he's very much kind of just trying to do his own thing, and he doesn't quite get the appeal of all of this. While Jolta is, of course, singing Erzsébet's praises and everything, talking about how it's like, oh, I used to be a priestess for Sekhmet. And it's like, oh, we're bringing Egyptian shit into this. Which is later parroted by the slave master vampire, who talks about how Erzsébet had drinking the blood of Sekhmet or something. It's it's bullshit. It's absolute propaganda. Erzsébet's creating this mythology for herself to lure in followers, and it's like you're just gaslighting people now. It's like, don't get me wrong. I know that there are like otherworldly higher beings in this universe. We literally saw death last series, but I don't think that like the Egyptian gods very specifically exist. Because you would have to, at that point, you would basically have to confirm almost any pantheon of gods. Like any pantheon, any sets of deities around the entirety of the world, you would basically have to confirm, and that's just not really possible. Like all of them are not going to be around at the same time. Like that doesn't work with the mythology. So I think she's bullshitting. I feel like there's no reason to think otherwise, honestly. But I want to check one thing real quick before we end this. I don't recognize the name Juiced Belmont. So I'm wondering, if is he a character from the games? Yes, he is the main character of Harmony of Dissonance. He is the grandson of Simon. Okay. So that explains where Simon is compared to Richter, too. Okay. Interesting. Okay, but this is saying Juiced is the son of Trevor and Sypha, which would make Trevor and Sypha the great grandparents of Richter. But I don't think that timing adds up, does it? I don't know. That might have been a spoiler. I might have just spoiled myself. I'm not going to look up much more. Um, but I do see a picture of him, I guess, from the games. Obviously, a younger version of him, long silver hair and everything. Wears like this red fancy cloak. Hmm. Okay, no, it says according to the game he's related to Sypha too. Trying to see if I could like find a like family tree based on the games and everything. Just out of curiosity. Oh god, here's one. Okay, according to this one, Trevor and Sypha had a kid named Christopher, though. Hmm. According to this, Juiced is further down. Unless I'm reading this wrong. Because under... I don't know. And Richter is further down from Juice than would be like... I'm not exactly sure how it is. I think this family tree is just confusing. I don't know. But either way, it's very interesting, to say the least. And I'm very interested to see. I'm not going to look up anymore because I don't want to get spoiled. um, I'm very interested to see where this goes. And yeah, we have 3 more episodes. So, is he going to train Richter? Is that where this is going to go? I guess we'll see. Either way, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this episode of Castlevania Nocturne? And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.